Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Global Changemakers' first ever virtual youth summit. My name is Gabriela Jäger, and I'm the co-founder and programs director of GCM. We're really excited to welcome you today. We have prepared 5 days of youth-centered panels and networking sessions where you will get to hear from really inspiring people who are bringing positive change to the world. Under the topic, A Decade to Action, the Virtual Youth Summit will focus on the work young people are doing to reach the 17th Sustainable Development Goals. We have 5 panel sessions according to the 5 Ps agreed by the UN member states for the 2030 Agenda: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. A 6th panel, our inaugural one, will be focusing on the action young people are taking to address the current COVID crisis. We have also in store for you some prizes. 15 participants will win either full scholarships to Changemakers schools or premium access passes to Steps to Startup. In order to enter the draw, please share a photo of yourself attending any of the sessions at the VYS on social media and tag us. The winners will be announced by the end of the summit. I now have the honor and privilege to present to you the message of Kathy Hochul, Lieutenant Governor of New York, who has these words of encouragement and inspiration for youth worldwide. Lieutenant Hochul is the second-ranking official in the state and the highest-ranking female elected official in New York. As Lieutenant Governor, she has successfully spearheaded numerous initiatives and led the administration's economic development and job creation efforts across the state. Due to the time difference with New York, this message was specially pre-recorded for you.
Hi, I'm New York State Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, and I'm really proud to join you at this 2020 Virtual Youth Summit. I want to say hello to all the global change makers. I am so impressed with the work that you are already doing, gathering virtually, listening to experts and your peers from around the globe to come up with solutions for our future. And it really inspires me to know that there are young people across this planet who care so deeply about their communities that they're willing to invest their time and their talents and their energy to come up with solutions that we all desperately need to envision a more just, a more sustainable future. So I thank you for participating in this. I got very involved in the political process as a teenager, working to elect good people to government, and I've been a lifelong public servant ever since. So what you're doing today are putting in together the building blocks to help propel you to a position of influence to help direct our countries and our states to a better future. And I thank you for that. I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Wow. Once again, our heartfelt thanks to Lieutenant Governor Hochul and her team for sharing these words of inspiration for youth and for making space to address you during these trying times in which the world is going through so much and New York City has been hit so hard. Without further ado, I would like now to welcome our first panel, comprised of global change makers from different cohorts and countries who are addressing the COVID-19 crisis in different ways. We have Diana Chow from China and the USA, founder of Letters to Strangers. Say hello, Diana.
Oh, hello. Nice to meet you all virtually.
We also have Chantel Nieto from the Philippines.
Hi, nice to meet everyone.
Rafsan Savab from Bangladesh, host of What a Show. And finally, Daniel Macmillan Voskovoynik, author and youth coordinator for Oxfam, who will be moderating this session. Before I hand it over to Daniel, please let me ask you to use the hashtags VYS2020 and hashtag WeAreGCM, and to use the chat functionality to share with us where you're joining us from and to interact with the panel when it's open for questions. You can find and download the full program for the summit under the handouts here. Once again, thank you, and over to you, Dan.
Thank you so much, Gabby, and thank you so much to everyone at the other end of the camera. There are thousands of people, young people all around the world in over 104 countries that are joining us over these 4 days. The COVID crisis, more than anything, shows our interdependence, how connected we are, and how fundamentally linked we are to each other. And so we're going to be taking these days to really also further that, to be meeting with each other, to be networking and exploring as young people what are the issues we're working on and what are the solutions we can propose to build a better world. We're at a crossroads right now. A crossroads is a very difficult moment, a moment of a lot of pain, a lot of grief. The situation, both from a health situation, but from a wider social and economic perspective, is pretty desperate. It's revealing all the intense inequalities and injustices that already existed in the world. But fortunately, it's also revealing the cracks of hope and young people at the forefront of offering alternatives, of thinking through how we can build back better from this crisis and how we can make sure that we don't return to normal, because normal in itself was a problem. How we can use this moment to both offer relief to people, but turbocharge our way to a much more just and sustainable future. So I'm very lucky today to be joined by a number of incredible youth activists who are doing incredible work right now in a very, very difficult moment to try and put forward alternatives and offer support to people. We're going to be talking today about youth action, exploring what it means as young people to be taking action at this moment, and hopefully inspiring and learning from each other about what other things we can be doing. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to my fellow youth activists who will be talking a bit about the work they're doing in their communities to mobilize resources and offer responses to this crisis. I'd love for us to start with Chantal Nieto from the Philippines, who'll be talking about the work they're doing. Over to you, Chantal.
Thank you, Daniel. So my name is Chantal Nieto. I'm from the Philippines. I was a Global Changemaker participant back in 2017, so that was about 3 years ago. And in 2018, I was a facilitator. Today, I am a corporate analyst in a financial firm, so that's mostly my day job. But as a response to the coronavirus crisis and all of the problems it brought about in our society, my family and I started an initiative in our town of Cainta. So every day we strive to provide about 1,000 and relief. So relief in the form of meal, in the form of relief, and in other necessities they need in order to get through this crisis. So far we've distributed about 120,000 relief, 5,000 kilos of first, thousands of canned goods, disinfectants, and alcohol. And we're still continuing our work every day because the lockdown in our community continues to be extended, while at the same time the needs of the community have not necessarily changed. And because of this, we continue our work, we continue our service, so that we provide with now, but to also help through the transition of a better normal.
Thank you so much, Chantal, for sharing that really, really inspiring and important work. I'd love to hand it over next to Rafsan from Bangladesh to talk about the work that he's been doing in this crisis.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Rafsan. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm very excited to be here and also very inspired to hear from the fellow panelists and everyone else who have joined us here. So I am a stand-up comedian and talk show host from Bangladesh. I was a part of Global Changemakers Youth Summit in 2016, which has been one of the most transforming experiences of my life so far. So as a talk show host, I host a show. It's like a late night show, like the Jimmy Kimmel's one or the Ellen DeGeneres one you see on the internet. So they have always been inspirations. So normally it's done with a live audience, and we do this like 1 or 2 episodes per month. But once this COVID-19 situation hit us, what we did was we wanted to adapt to the situation because a lot of the people were asking for the show to continue, and we wanted to find out a way to how to do this. So then we started doing this through Facebook Live. Every night we made one episode with one of the most influential people from different sectors of the country. But the twist was in our objective. So of course, the first objective is to help people uplift themselves in these times of anxiety and stress. But the other important objective for us to raise funds every night for all the organizations who are trying to feed the unprivileged, who are trying to fight the scenario for the frontline workers who needed a lot of support in terms of financial support or other different elements. So every night we utilize the exposure that we get to gather support for all these organizations who are working in the frontline. So far we have done 24 episodes and it's going on. And yeah, the journey has been very fulfilling so far.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Roxanne. And finally, I'd love to hear a little bit from Diana about the work that you've been doing in response to the COVID crisis.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for sharing all of your awesome work to my fellow panelists, and also I'm sure all of you who are watching for being interested in doing something about this. So I'm Diana Chow. I am the founder and executive director of Letters to Strangers. We are the world's largest youth for youth mental health nonprofit. And I was a global change maker this past summer, 2019. So recently kind of joined the family, but very grateful to be part of it. So a little bit about Letters to Strangers. We focus on not just writing letters to strangers, but also working on educational materials through science-informed backgrounds, and then also grassroots policy-based advocacy. And we are an internationally based organization with chapters in over a dozen countries on 6 continents, which means that with the COVID crisis, things definitely have been interesting. For one, I was born in China, and most of my family is still in China. So, of course, and some of my family members live in Wuhan. So they were the first people to experience the COVID crisis. But of course, the way that it spread around the world has led to us to come up with different types of responses depending on the situation in that local environment. So we've been attacking this problem with various prongs. On one end, we've been increasing the rate of letter exchanges, both within our chapters and also with non-affiliated individuals. A lot of people have more time on their hands, but also less people to have a human connection with. So this increasing letter exchanges is our way of trying to deal with that. We're actively coding and are almost done with creating an online platform to facilitate that exchange process even more easily. Another thing that we've been doing is we extended our mental health scholarships, which is an annual thing, but this time we extended it so that people who are from all countries can apply. And if they have a need to get money for mental health services and treatment, they can apply as well. I know that's like a big concern for a lot of people right now. And yeah, we're also working on partnering with big corporations such as Adobe to create online challenges that are provided with templates and of course other sort of free resources so that people of all backgrounds can get at least not only basic knowledge, but also can actively participate on a broader level as well.
Amazing, amazing, really inspiring work and super important. I think there's been a common theme of addressing the mental health crisis that is bubbling underneath the pandemic and addressing the important need for human connection at this time. I think I want to start kind of on that final point around need, right? I think all of you in different ways are addressing kind of needs that are being surfaced or being made more intense at this moment of crisis. So I wanted to ask you all if you can just share your thoughts on what are the most pressing needs that we need to respond to now? What are some of the most overlooked needs that you're seeing in your communities? Mainly as young activists, for us to think about, to try and make visible what might be under the surface. So at this time of a pandemic, what are the needs in your community that you are seeing that are most urgent, and how are you seeing it in your community? I don't know if Chantal, if you want to go first.
Oh, yes. Okay. So as you've mentioned, we have a lot of needs that need to be taken care of, whether in our communities or in all other communities around the world. What I've realized, and what I believe a lot of people should realize, is that the COVID crisis isn't just a health crisis. Yes, health is central to this pandemic. We need to facilitate. There is a need for testing. There is a need for better treatments. There is a need for vaccine. But at the same time, this health crisis is also a socioeconomic crisis. It's also a crisis on, as Diana mentioned, on mental health. It is also a crisis on say security and on I guess solidarity or a lack thereof. So in our community, what's very apparent, or at least in our country, what's very apparent is COVID being one of a socioeconomic crisis as well. A lot of people, especially the marginalized areas, would constantly say, if the virus doesn't kill us, hunger will, starvation will, poverty will. And poverty is an issue that has been here long before COVID has. And it's an issue that has been further aggravated by this crisis. And this is something that we constantly need to address each and every day, because the people, they can't go a day without food or without water. So as much as we need to facilitate testing, research on proper ways to cure, treat, and prevent this disease, we also have to take into consideration the steps that have to be undertaken in order for our people, especially the most vulnerable sectors, to get through this on a day-to-day basis. Even before the pandemic, these people already live hand to mouth, live day by day. All the more now that because of the lockdowns, they don't have work. No one has work. And with this, no one has sufficient income stream coming in. And without much savings brought about by the demands of poverty on a day-to-day basis, they have hardly anything to pull out of their pockets for them to get food, for them to get supplies, for them to get soap, and anything. So we need to support those. What I've also realized is that although marginalized sectors are very much widespread and very much encompassing in their nature, others are, I guess, better treated than some that are often left in the sidelines. In our work, I realized how many single mothers there are, and how they don't just need food or water to get by. They need milk, they need diapers, because their children need those necessities. And sometimes this is something that's often overlooked. But people I've also been in contact with include persons with disabilities, so PWDs. They're very vulnerable as a sector, but often overlooked because of perhaps some of them being less vocal about their needs, some of them being underrepresented in positions of power, in places where all these discussions take place. And especially for PWDs, they don't always get to go out. They don't get to go out and ask for help. They don't get to go out to work. So they really need even more support now. And this is something that not each PWD sector, not each PWD organization gets to have. So these are the needs I've identified in our community, and that I hope we can continue to address as the days go by.
Thank you, Chantal. That was really, really comprehensive, and just shows us how fundamentally tied up this crisis is to kind of the deeper crises you mentioned. Issues of poverty, issues of injustice, issues of gender injustice were there before, and this is accelerating and magnifying them. I wanted to ask you, Rafsan, if that feels resonant to you. Is that similar to the situation in Bangladesh? What do we have to be paying attention to that's coming up from under the surface in Bangladesh?
I think I completely agree to what Chantal said, and the socioeconomic crisis that she mentioned about is also very well observed in Bangladesh right now as well, because in a country when a lot of people are working in the informal sector who do not really have let's say job security, or who do not really have formal structures of getting paid or their rights being secured through some sort of policy. So there they suffer as early as possible, like they suffer earlier than anyone else. And we have a huge amount of our population who work in the informal sector. And as soon as the economic crisis started surfacing, a lot of the people probably lost their jobs, probably did not did not continue to receive their salaries anymore. At times what happened was because these people have to depend on their daily wages, it's not really a job-like structure, so a lot of the people were suffering because they didn't have work, as Chantal mentioned. So we had a huge population who were just above the poverty line. Now they are going under the poverty line again. And so also because the infrastructure was not really ready from beforehand to battle a scenario like this, where you could efficiently provide them with relief and all the other supports that they might need. Sometimes it's difficult to reach everyone who's suffering. Sometimes it's difficult to reach everyone who needs things like the basic support like food or medicines or anything else. But of course, this is one part of the big problem. The other problem is there is a middle class layer in our society, in our country, who are not really poor, who are not really privileged. So they're the ones who face a unique kind of problem. So they would not really go for any relief activities to support them. They would also not be able to support themselves by their work. So they are the ones who suffer in a unique kind of situation. So it's like their socioeconomic status is something that sort of makes them puzzled about what to do because they don't really want to go and seek for relief. But then again, they will also have to think about their family, and situations like this is quite difficult, something that we have never faced before. So the socioeconomic crisis is, of course, there, as Sean will say. But I think the other kind of crisis that I sort of feel is the need for hope, because now is the time when we all sort of are very uncertain about what's going to happen in the next months. No one knows when this is going to come to an end. No one knows when are we going back to normal. No one knows what exactly to do, because everyone is trying to do their part. Everyone is trying to be helpful in different ways they can. But every now and then during this time in your stay home period, you'd face this emotion where uncertainty bothers you, where you are faced by all these questions that goes on inside your head, and poses a threat to your mental health, as Diana was saying. So that was something that we also wanted to address through our activities as a part of probably the entertainment scenario, because I think the purpose of entertainment is also plays a huge role in terms of uplifting people, in terms of taking your stress and anxiety away, even if for a while. And I think I read it somewhere, I don't know if it's solid, but there's probably some biological references that when you are under stress, when you are feeling anxious, your immune system is also sort of under threat. It doesn't really work that well as it's supposed to. So that is something that we try doing every night to try to uplift people through positive entertainment, besides giving them some hope about what we can do together, and this togetherness, how it can benefit us. And also the other thing that we try to do was this crisis is sometimes leading to new levels of crisis. For example, we know that in our country, it was a huge awareness deal to tell everyone that you need to wash your hands for 20 seconds for this germ to be killed completely. So you need to use soaps and you need to wash your hands for 20 seconds. So while doing it for 20 seconds, a lot of the people would be wasting a lot of water, because if you continuously run water for like 20 seconds, it wastes around 1.5 to 2 liters of water, and which might even give birth to a new crisis, which is water crisis. So we try to gather all this information together and send it using the exposure that we get every night, while giving out some messages of hope, while trying to gather support from everyone. So overall, yeah, those are some of the things that I reckon was important.
Thank you so much, Rapsan. Really also insightful as well. I want to ask Diana, just extend that question to you. What has the situation shown you just about some of the needs in your community and some of the things that have been hidden underneath the surface maybe and are coming up now?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a very unfortunate time in all sorts of ways, but I think we also definitely see the under prioritization and in a way dismissal of mental health in many societies around the world within this crisis. On one end, you have things like, for example, when people are forced to stay at home, sometimes they are at home with abusive family members, or they are in a very difficult environment where there's a lot of stressors or socioeconomic pressures, etc., that they can't escape from with school. And for a lot of our chapter members in developing countries, especially where maybe the public education system requires a huge amount of fees, having that down payment for their education and then having that education be like halted halfway through has led to a lot of questions among them, sort of like self-guilt and blame for, in a way, what they see as wasting their family's hard-earned money on education that they're no longer getting. And that sort of shame, in a way, has led a lot of them to really spiral. And I think one thing that is especially hard is, I mean, I think all of us have felt to some extent the effects that quarantine and staying home can have on your mental health, but especially for people with very depressive thoughts or otherwise symptoms of mental illness, when your mind is your own worst enemy, having your mind be the only other thing that you can converse with throughout the day can very easily lead people down a spiral. And when you don't have people like teachers or your fellow students watching out for you, watching out for those signs, it's very difficult to spot someone who needs help right away. And one other thing that we've seen is because mental health is not prioritized in many countries, we've, for example, so right now I am in study abroad at Singapore, and Singapore, like many other countries, have basically shut down all what they consider non-essential services. But one of the things that they consider as non-essential are psychological services, which I believe is critical and should not have been shut down. And you see a lot of other countries, and even within the US, where psychiatric nurses, etc., are being redirected to care for the influx of COVID-19 patients, which is certainly very important. But when you have when you already have very few psychiatric hospitals to begin with, and then you're emptying them out for COVID patients, and you're getting rid of the staff and transferring them to COVID, then you end up with like this huge population of people who are completely without the care that they need to survive. And it is a life or death situation for them as well. So this is a very difficult situation to navigate for sure. And yeah, we definitely, there's a lot of disparities across the world, but I really hope that people can take the mental health side of it very seriously as well.
Thank you so much, Diana. So we've heard from our incredible panelists and illuminated many of these different dimensions. The mental health crisis that's being often dismissed and seen as non-essential by certain governments, the combination of crises of poverty, of hunger, of lack of access to resources, people who work as day laborers who don't have the privilege of being able to have some kind of income they can fall back on, what we mean when we talk about a lockdown for people to stay in their homes. What does that mean for people without homes, or for people for whom home is a site of violence or abuse? So many different facets hide behind this crisis, and it can often feel really overwhelming. So I want to pick up on a point that Rafsan mentioned, which is the crisis of hope. How do we see hope in these times, and what kind of direction do we need for young people and for people in general to feel inspired to make it out of this crisis? Are we going to try and have a just recovery where we build a better world in the process, or is this really the beginning of a very, very difficult period? So how are you understanding hope in this moment? How are you addressing your own personal crisis of hope, but also a crisis of hope for others? Where should we as young people draw inspiration from, and what should we be hoping towards? Who wants to start us off with that tiny question?
Right, I could start.
Sure, go ahead, Russ.
Right. So I think one of the enemies of hope in this state right now is the news that we keep on seeing constantly. So let's say if you read newspapers, if you are following news channels, it's I think news is absolutely important. Of course, it keeps us informed. But when you keep on being bombarded with news of problems 24/7, so what happens is you just probably end up being anxious, being under stress, and being attacked by all the negativities, all the negative threats that are coming your way, that are coming towards your communities. But rather, once we sort of also recognize the positive things that's happening around us, that is sometimes the source of hope for a lot of people. So I absolutely love social media posts where people are sharing their realizations about how this situation has also brought out some good things. For example, our earth is healing. We know that pollution, stuff like air pollution, has come to an all-time low for after quite a while. So we have also seen some amazing acts of kindness, amazing acts of heroism from people like who work in the medical sector, like healthcare workers, people who deliver essentials to our doorsteps. So we have seen inspiring stories all around the world. So I think when we talk about hope, the source of it can at times be from these inspiring stories that we see around us. Because in general, our lifestyle has become very monotonous because we have to stay indoors 24/7. We don't really have much to do. We might have work, but then again, work is also maybe not at the same pace. Things are not normal. You have a lot of time in your hand. So once you are just inside your bedroom, thinking about all the negative things all the time, and thinking about all the practical problems that we are facing, at times it's difficult to find hope. But I think it's easy to find hope when you start changing the perspective, when you start seeing the amazing acts of kindness, inspiration, and heroism that you see from people around you who are trying to support others in any way they can. When you try to be a part of that act yourself. So that is what I try to do every night. When, as a young person, you try to do something. It could be anything. It doesn't always have to be supporting a family through financial support. It doesn't always have to be by going outdoors, by running from door to door trying to supply people with their necessities. But it could be in any way you can, or any way you want to support people through your capabilities, through your acts. And I think once you start doing that, once you start contributing or giving back to the community in a difficult time like this, you sort of find hope, because you know now that you are a part of the change that is necessary, that is absolutely necessary in a time like this. And we also realize a lot of things, like if you really want to do something, if you really want to contribute, if you really want to get closer to the communities who are being affected by this crisis, you don't really have to depend on anyone. You don't really have to depend on your government. You don't really have to depend on any sort of infrastructure that is being there to reduce the efficiency, but rather you can do something yourself. So that is what sort of inspired me to do my work, that I am just a show host. I make shows online. I'm there as a part of the entertainment scenario. So how could we use entertainment to, let's say, add some purpose and meaning to it, and maybe contribute towards this difficult time? So when I started doing this online show every night, and I started listening from people that it's helping them to refreshen their mood just before they go to sleep. It's helping them to contribute to all the organizations who are trying to battle this from the front line. That is when I found my hope, that somehow my work is adding meaning, somehow my work is adding a bit of contribution in this whole scenario. So I think my single message would be that, like, whatever we do, whatever our capabilities are, if we just add one simple perspective, that how can I contribute from my side, I think that is going to be a great source of hope for you as well.
Thank you so much, Rapsan, for that really, really inspiring answer. I don't know if Diana, you want to go next and address?
Yeah, if that's okay. I just thought, because what Rapsan said was so in line with what I was thinking about, because a lot of what we do at Letters to Strangers when it comes to mental health, mental illnesses, etc., is really concentrating on how to discover that seed of hope in times, no matter how dark they are. And partly that's what the point of the letter exchanges are, to give people a chance to voice their thoughts, to exchange those human connections with each other, even in this time of isolation. But the other part of it is, and this is something that I've personally adopted as my philosophy ever since I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 13 years old, which is, people tell you that you should be the creator of your own light, that you shouldn't have to rely on anyone else. And that is very true. But sometimes all of our energy is spent on fighting ourselves, fighting that despair, fighting whatever else. And so if you can borrow someone else's light for a while, just to stand in their glow and see where it illuminates the path forward, I think that is absolutely possible and justified. And so what that means is, if it's helpful for you to listen to someone else's story, or to talk to someone with the hope that you can have a conversation that might help them in a way that fits their needs, then even though the situation isn't supposed to be technically about yourself, you'll come out of it feeling more hopeful and feeling more revived as well. And it doesn't have to look like a conversation with words. It doesn't have to be a letter. It could be something like Rafsan said, really embracing that volunteering aspect regardless of what specific activity that is. But more importantly, just giving yourself that permission where if you don't feel the hope within you, to allow yourself to try to engender that hope within other people. And when you give other people that seed, you too get a little bit of it as well.
Amazing, yeah, that was beautiful. Chantal, can you take us home on the question of hope?
Yes, definitely. Diana, I love what you said about really cultivating that seed of hope and allowing yourself to go into other people's at least other people's flow. I love it. I absolutely love that motto. And I've been thinking about hope a lot over the past few weeks, mostly and especially because these are very trying times. And when times are very trying, it's very difficult to think about what can happen next or about what will happen next. It's very difficult to think about hope, but it's something that's very necessary. And I've been talking to a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my friends about this. And what we've realized collectively is that one, there's a difference between hope and optimism. And we believe that sometimes this difference can stem um, between in the fine line between, I guess, blind optimism and acceptance. So especially during these very trying times when we find it difficult to find hope from our external environment or even from projections of other people into the future, it is important to learn how to just sit with what is happening. If we look at the news, as Rafsan said, we can lose hope because about 99% of the news are probably bad news, or at least sad news. And so, how do we foster hope there? Well, one crucial step is to first accept that this is our reality, at least for now. This is the reality we have to sit in with. And I think fostering that acceptance and not necessarily resisting this reality we're faced in allows us to be a bit more resilient about it. It allows us to foster resilience and to simply, although slowly, adapt to this new environment we're in. After sitting in with this reality and accepting it for what it is, it also helps to, as Roxanne and Diana said, to look into the pockets of light that may be found within these very dark times. There are a lot of them, and you can pick your own little opposite of poison. You can look into humor and comedy and entertainment, as Roxanne is doing. You could look into solidarity and the way communities come together, whether in your own community or whether in the global community. You could look into advancements. We're looking into medicine and technology to give yourself a bit more hope or for the future. So you could look into the bright side of things, whether regardless of how minute or small they may seem. Afterwards, I've learned that, especially for us change makers, I feel like we all have an increased capacity for empathy. We do a lot of change making, and usually change making entails something that's wrong or something that's marginalized. And we try our best to empathize with those situations. We monitor those situations, but that can lead to burnout. And I think that's the same thing we're dealing with as a global community right now. We're trying to empathize with everything that's wrong with this pandemic, and it can lead us to burnout. Research has shown that empathy alone can lead to burnout, can lead to people just falling out of their work because it can be draining. It can be draining to continuously receive and receive and receive. We have to give back. We have to let go of some of these things. One is through acceptance, as earlier mentioned, and another is actually through transitioning empathy and translating it into compassion, which is basically empathy in action. So I think, and this might be a reach, But what's helped my family, and what's helped, I believe, a lot of change makers in GCM and beyond to foster their own pockets of hope within them, is to actually see, as Roxanne was saying, is to actually see what they can do in their community, to see what within their resources, their competencies, their networks, they can come up with, so to solve the problems they feel passionate about and they feel they could solve. And I think that when empathy goes in line with action and moves towards compassion, we mitigate the risk of burnout a lot more. We foster hope within ourselves a lot more, and we foster hope in others as well. Just as what Diana is saying, that when you do something, you're not the only one that's giving yourself light and hope. You're also giving others light and hope. And I think, as a last point, as what Dan mentioned, now is the time to hope for the future and for what it could look like. Although it may seem bleak, there is also a huge opportunity to listen to what all of this is telling us, to look into what inadequacies, what inefficiencies, what points of exploitation this current system has, and to see what we can do about it. Right now, we're all trying to adjust to the pandemic, and because of this, we're rediscovering new ways of doing things, rediscovering new logistical systems, new work from home systems, and we're finding out that some of these actually work, and that some of these might actually address long-standing issues and inefficiencies we initially were brushing off when everything was normal. So I think this is a great opportunity to reimagine our world, and to make it one that's a bit more inclusive, empowering, and empathetic for all. And I guess as the last, and what I constantly remind myself and others of every day, is that before we go to bed, it's nice to think about how this day we got through, is our day closer to the day is all finally ends. So we're getting there one day at a time. We just have to stay strong and to stay together. So I think it's only together that we can actually beat this pandemic.
Thank you so much, Chantal. We're just going to have one final intervention before we move ahead to addressing everyone's questions. Just a little reminder for everyone, you can post your questions in the chat box and we'll get to them as soon as we finish our little panel discussion. But in the meantime, I want to introduce the wonderful Sam Johnson from New Zealand. Sam, in a very compressed few minutes, I'd love for you to talk about what you're working on at the moment in terms of youth responses to the COVID crisis, and just your reflections on, firstly, what are the needs that are emerging underneath this pandemic? How is this pandemic, what is this pandemic telling us about what we need to pay attention to? And finally, where do you see hope within the cracks? What kind of world do we need to start building? And what does a just recovery look like in your eyes? So go ahead, Sam. I think you're on mute, Sam.
Kia ora koutou, good evening, good morning, hello to everyone around the world. I apologise for lateness. I think I've been caught in the time change that New Zealand has just gone under. Look, I have the privilege to run an organisation that was formed really with huge inspiration from global change makers. It's called Student Volunteer Army. We're a student-based organisation across New Zealand. We mobilise students both at university and now at high school and at primary school to learn the basic principles of volunteering and volunteerism. We're quite almost agnostic in terms of what volunteering we do, but it's about getting people off the couch, as we say, and into volunteering, both to make yourself as a volunteer feel like you've been able to contribute and contributing to causes that those volunteers care about, but it's all focused on the principles of volunteering. In the post-COVID environment here, New Zealand's been in a lockdown now for nearly over a month, and we're lucky as an island country to be doing well in our fight against COVID, and a very privileged place to be. But certainly, what we focused on, and as a change maker, I guess, we started focusing on a number of things. and volunteer matching and response, etc. And the best advice that we got from a group of people supporting us was to narrow it all very much down to one thing. And we more or less cut away everything else that we were doing and focused on designing a grocery delivery service for a supermarket chain that had no technology behind it. It's quite a significant supermarket chain in New Zealand, but they didn't have an online shopping delivery service. So our team and our network, we partner with them to focus on delivering groceries to elderly, to those living with disability, and those who can't get out of the house to get it, and those medically vulnerable. And as a result, we've delivered hundreds of groceries in the last couple of weeks around New Zealand. What we're seeing is that people aren't very good at asking for help. After a month or so in the lockdown, people, particularly our Indigenous people, Maori people, are only just now starting to ask for help. And we're going to see a lot more of that need as the health service kicks back into gear next week, as some of the lockdown restrictions are eased. But I think the number one thought from me coming to join the panel tonight is just around Changemaker projects and keeping them very simple. It's a complex environment. We've had 72 in our core team running our operation and 2,000 volunteers. The simpler you keep them, and the clearer you are on that purpose and what your unique contribution is, walking alongside everyone else, the simpler you keep it, the more effective you can be.
Amazing. What a beautiful way to end. It's a wonderful segue in terms of specific tips. I think we're having a lot of really amazing questions from around the world. I want to read a few of them, but really kind of put them together in a few themes so we can address them, because we don't have too much time left. I think the main thing that people are looking for, especially from our incredible young activists here on the panel, is just some hot tips, as Sam was just saying, in terms of simplicity. We've got one question that asks, I've just set up a project to connect people and cross social divides during these difficult times, as well as show those who are having a particularly tough time during lockdown that they are not alone. What would your advice be to someone who has just set up a project and is trying to grow it in the best way I can? And we've got another question, which is, how are you building partnerships and solidarity for your work during this period? I work with a nonprofit providing alternative learning platforms amid school closures here in Nigeria, especially for rural children who don't have access to e-learning. Getting partnerships and collaboration with stakeholders have been pretty difficult. So how do you leverage support and collaboration to drive your COVID response? We have a lot of questions kind of on these points, very practical questions, which is, one is, I don't know how to start. I'm seeing all these needs happening in my community, but we don't have any youth networks. I don't know how to set one up. How do I reach out to people in my community and mobilize them? That's a few questions in that range. And then other questions, if people with existing organizations curious about how to respond to this very complex and unstable, uncertain dynamic, and other people curious about what does it mean to mobilize funds in an economic crisis, or look for collaborations and partnerships at a time of isolation. So we've got lots of different challenges, but all very much in the world of practical steps. So keeping it really, really short and sweet, fellow activists, what would be your hot tips for young change makers around the world, trying to make sense of this changing landscape, but very, very eager to offer their time and support to supporting their communities? Keep it as short as you can, please. Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to go. If
Sam, take it away.
I would say number one, use the tools that are already in your pockets. Now is not the time to try and learn something totally new. So if you have an idea to do something that's totally outside your skill set, it's probably not the time to do that right now. Partner with someone who has a deep skill set in that domain. So in our context, we wanted to do an online shopping service. We knew that was a big need, and we wanted to do a call center as well. Now, there are two skills I didn't have, so we had to partner with organizations who could bring those skills in, because now is not the time for our organization to learn those skills. So we had to partner. So number one from me, use the tools that are in your pockets. We have incredible technology with us. Typically, we're not that good at utilizing those tools. We are always focused on creating new things. So use what we've got, use what networks you have, and really understand the unique value that you have to bring to the situation, because it will be immense. The fact you're on this call means you've got immense access to a big network of people who are really willing to help. So use those networks, and that's your gift and your contribution that you can support a lot of people with.
I think my 2 cents would be that in terms of making good partnerships or being able to convince others to join your initiative, is that in times like this, one of the most important things is to showcase impact. So when you show people that what sort of impact that you are generating from your work, like I am being able to support 1,000 people, or my content is being watched by, let's say, 10,000 people, then others are probably more convinced to join hands with you to be a part of something that is creating impact. So yes, impact showcasing is probably one thing that you need to be very careful about once trying to convince others and partners.
Related to that, it's very important, I think, to find your niche. So what I mean by that is, really recognize what it is that is a specific problem that you want to tackle. And I think sometimes we have like the tendency to just assume that we know what's best for a specific population. But especially if we don't belong to that background, it's important to make sure you actually, try to understand what those people need and talk to them before you seek to set up any sort of services, so that you can actually address what is their biggest need. And the other thing is, as much as we want to be the quote unquote creator of things, I think we don't give enough credit to the importance of banding together. Right now, if you see other people working on similar things, why not just work together, create a bigger impact that way? And you're still creating change and creating perhaps more effective, more wide-reaching change than you might be able to do separately in your own individual groups.
Those are some amazing. Sorry, Chantal, do you want to add one thing?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've been working a lot with partnerships, because that's basically how we've been getting relief. So we've been partnering with companies and organizations. And yeah, as everyone mentioned, like we usually work with 3 C's. The first one is competence. Work with how your net resources and your competencies, so that you can address the second C, which is community connection. Connect with the community, really know and listen to what their problems are. So don't go into a community and assume you can save them. Ask them what really works from them and what they really need. And the third one is clear collaboration. And this is where the partnerships come in. So you can't do everything alone. So reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out to organizations, but be clear with what you want. Be clear with your ask, so they know if this is something they can provide, and this is something that they'll actually need. And if not, you'll know how you can meet in the middle. And this will also really help you in the long run as well, because there would be reporting needs, documentation needs. So there's something you can go back to see if the partnership was effective, if both parties actually did what they committed they'd give, and so on. So yeah, those are the 3 C's that we usually work with when dealing with projects and with dealing with partnerships.
Amazing. Those are some wonderful tips for everyone. I think in terms of, we all working in different scenarios and different contexts and have different ideas on what we want to do, but I think those are some really useful general ways to help us think them through. We have, I think, there's a whole lot of different questions. We're going to have to save them for networking sessions or for other sessions, but we just have one also broad question that I want to ask of our panelists, and you've got 15 seconds. So I think all of you, in addition to the immediate COVID work you're doing, also working on longer term projects. And many of us here working very specifically on SDGs and on a 2030 agenda. So a big concern that people have is, what does this pandemic do to that agenda and to the work that we're trying to do in the long term? So very quickly, how do we sustain our long-term work and our long-term visions in the midst of this uncertainty? 20 seconds each, keep it short, big question, but I trust in you. Who wants to start?
I can start. So just always remember that nothing is created outside that isn't already created or present inside. And so when sustaining your projects and your visions, especially during this pandemic, be sure to sustain yourself, to be cognizant of your well-being and the well-being of your team, and then just work together one day at a time to fulfill your vision for the future.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think the point that I would like to add is just look for the ways people are adapting innovatively in your arena globally. Like times like this makes us to innovate and adapt to the situation. So learning from those adaptations can always help us to navigate through the future.
Okay, sorry. I would say try to condense your goals as much as possible. Sometimes we want to create flashy things, and that's okay and that's cool, but it's not always necessary. So, for example, we tying mental health to the importance of physical health during this time to make the impact and the severity and the importance more obvious. So really look for ways to kill two birds with one stone, as they say, and minimize your costs and efforts that way.
Finally, from me, I've spent the last 10 years with our organization responding to one natural disaster. It's taken 10 years and we're only just starting to recover. So I would say the recovery from this COVID will be the rest of our lives, if not the next 10 years or 20 years. So reorientate your work to focus on how COVID you can respond to that, not just the virus, but the economic recovery. So incorporate what's happening now with your program of work. Look at what are the key things from your work in your previous time that you can carry forward, and lessen the load so you can focus well on that.
Okay, thank you so much, Sam, for closing us off, and to our wonderful panelists. I'd like everyone, if they can, just from your homes, just give a little virtual round of applause for our incredible speakers. And to all of yourselves for joining us. I think this is just an introduction to what's going to be an incredible few days of a summit. And the most important thing that this virtual summit gives us is each other. We are now going to have some incredible networking sessions, and who knows, there might be people in your actual community, people very close to you, or people from around the world that you can draw a lot of ideas, support, and inspiration from. This is a time for us to be together, to be learning together, and this network is, for all of us, has been an incredible tool in meeting people, in learning, and in building solidarity. So on that note, I want to thank all of our panelists, all of you for joining, and I want to hand over the mic to our wonderful Gabby, who's just going to give us a few more details on what sessions are coming up next. Hope that you all take care of yourselves, keep on the incredible activism and work, and together we're going to build a much more just and better world in the process. Take care, everyone.
Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you. We put together this really quickly, and just thanks again for your availability. You are an amazing network. Thank you all for joining in. We have a really quick poll. If you have 5 seconds, please make sure to vote on that. We have another session today at 12 noon GMT. And I hope you can join us. The rest of the program is available on the handout, so make sure to download it, and it's also available on our website. Thank you very much.
I guess this means we should adios.